Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're going to be looking at the cards which are featured within Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, the anime, from episode 43. Keep in mind that some of these cards will eventually get released, both within the OCG and the TCG, but some may never actually see release, or release that will happen in a number of years' time. 7's Twin Burst is a normal spell card with the requirement you can activate if the only monsters you control are one face-up 7 Roads Magician and one face-up 7 Roads Witch. The effect, the 7 Roads Magician you control gains attack equal to the attack of the 7 Roads Witch you control until the end of this turn. So I liken this to one of the cards that's introduced for spellcasters, comparing that with Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl. I think there is one that basically totals Dark Magician Girl's attack into Dark Magician's. So this is just the equivalent for this series of monsters. It's a decent enough effect that monster will end up being over 4,000 attack points, but it's very conditional. 7 Roads Magician is a level 7 monster requiring 2 tributes, and 7 Roads Witch is a 1 tribute monster. So to meet any of these two conditions, to have them both on the field at the same time and also have this card drawn within a turn, it's very niche and very difficult to achieve. And of course, speak of the devil, it does actually mention in the notes that this is a card reference to Dark Magic Twin Burst, which is the equivalent for the Dark Magician archetype. Rogue of Archfiend is a level 4 Dark Attribute Fiend type effect monster with 1200 attack and 1100 defense. The requirement, you can send this face-up card you control to the graveyard, and the effect is to choose up to 2 face-up normal monsters. There must be fiend types you control. This turn they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. It says as a note that this card is a reference to Lord of D. Of course, Lord of D actually works on dragons. This is the equivalent for fiend type monsters, so I don't know how useful that's going to be, considering the monsters have to be normal monsters, they're not effect ones, so even if your opponent wipes those cards out, they can't really do anything anyway. I suppose it's more for just having board presence. It also works alongside the Summoned Skull, which is probably one of the highest level 6 monsters you have in the game with 2,500 attack points. Even when you look at the stat lineup of this card, it's actually got the exact same stat line as Lord of D. Masenko the Magical Light is a normal spell card with the requirement you can activate if you control a Summoned Skull by sending one normal monster. It must be a fiend type from your hand to the graveyard. The effect is to destroy all face-up monsters, level 8 or lower, your opponent controls. During this turn, monsters cannot attack except Summoned Skull. So this is meant to be in reference to Makyu the Magical Mist, which was a card seen within the original series of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it basically had the same type of effect. It does require you to have a Summoned Skull on the field to begin with, and it does require a normal monster to be discarded, and it has to be a fiend type, so it can only be played within specific decks. The effect itself is actually okay. It's a bit like Lightning Vortex, but it has to affect those monsters that are level 8 or lower, which is fine at the moment. Outside of maximum monsters and maybe 1 or 2 other examples I can't think of, this will pretty much wipe out your opponent's entire field. The disadvantage is, if those monsters happen to be in defense position and in face-down defense position, or they happen to be in a position where they can be returned or protected from these types of effects, then this card is a little bit useless. It also means that only your Summoned Skull can attack during this turn, which means unless you've got 3 Summoned Skulls on your field, you are not going to be able to attack with more than likely 1 monster. And the final card is Joy of the Mighty. This is a normal trap card with the requirement you can activate when your opponent normal summons a monster. The effect is to choose 1 face-up normal monster you control. It gains 100 attack and defense times the level of the normal summoned monster until the end of the turn. This is supposed to be in reference to a card known as Burden of the Mighty. That actually worked a little bit the opposite, whereas what this does is it increases your monster's attack points by the summoned monster. That actually depletes your opponent's attack and defense points by 100 times the level of the monster summoned. So it was actually used against the Sacred Beasts in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 3, and they lost 1,000 attack points because they're both all level 10 monsters. So the higher the level, the more attack points they lost. This does the opposite, but it's fine. It has to rely on your opponent normal summoning a monster, and your monster has to be a normal monster to trigger this. It works very well with the monster that's actually pictured, which is Summon Skull, but other than that, there are a few exceptions that actually work alongside this card. So what do you guys think of these cards? Is there anything in particular you like? Is there anything you don't like? For me personally, I think trying to make the archetype anything more than what it is probably not necessary. Summon Skull is a bit forgettable. It's a signature card used by Yugi, probably within the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh, but he didn't really get any support or extensions prior or further to that. I know there's an Xyz version, I know there's another version as well, you've got a fusion version, but outside of that, it really didn't get the same level of support as things like Black Luster series or the Gaia, the Fierce Knight series, any of those types. Even smaller sub-archetypes such as Celtic Guardian received support. Karibo has recently received support as well. So it's definitely something I would only consider running if they can actually make it its own standalone archetype. Whatever you think, leave those comments down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.